You've already been dysregulated today. You just called it anxiety. That racing heart, the sudden shame, the way you went completely blank mid-conversation and couldn't find words. You thought that was you, your fault, your weakness. It wasn't. Someone learned exactly how your nervous system breaks down, and they used that knowledge like an instruction manual. The question is, do you know who it was? You've already been dysregulated today. You just called it anxiety. That racing heart, the sudden shame, the way you went completely blank mid-conversation and couldn't find words. You thought that was you, your fault, your weakness. It wasn't. Someone learned exactly how your nervous system breaks down, and they used that knowledge like an instruction manual. The question is, do you know who it was? There's a woman I want to tell you about. Her name was Claire. She was 31, a project manager, someone her colleagues described as exceptionally composed. She had a therapist. She meditated. By every external measure, she had done the work. And then she met Daniel. They dated for 14 months. In the last 4, she stopped trusting her own memory. She would shake before phone calls. She once stood in a grocery store for 20 minutes, unable to decide which bread to buy, and then cried in her car. Her therapist gently suggested she might have adult onset ADHD. She didn't have ADHD. What she had was someone in her life who had quietly, methodically, learned the exact conditions under which her nervous system would collapse, and had started manufacturing those conditions on purpose. Here's the thing most people don't understand about manipulation. The sophisticated version doesn't target your beliefs. It doesn't try to convince you of anything. It doesn't argue with you or wear you down logically. It targets your body because your nervous system is faster than your thinking brain. It responds before you can reason, before you can defend yourself, before you even know something is happening. A threat gets processed in milliseconds. The freeze response kicks in. The shame floods in. And by the time your prefrontal cortex shows up to the situation, it's already over. You're already destabilized. You already believe it was your fault. Daniel knew Claire had an anxious attachment style. She told him early on, the way people do when they're trying to be emotionally honest, when they're trying to be good partners. He held that information. He smiled. He said, "I appreciate you telling me that." And then he used it as a map. He learned that if he went quiet for 3 hours, just quiet, no explanation, her cortisol would spike. He learned that if he said something slightly off in front of friends, something that could be a joke or could be a cut, the ambiguity would keep her nervous system locked in a low-grade alarm state for hours. He learned that if he moved the argument somewhere public, her freeze response would kick in and she'd go blank. And he could later recall the conversation in ways that made her sound unreasonable. He wasn't doing these things in a rage. He was doing them calmly. That's what made it so hard to name. There was no screaming. There was no obvious cruelty. There was just a pattern of small sensory and emotional triggers deployed with precision that kept Claire's nervous system just flooded enough that she could never fully think straight around him. She was always in survival mode. And in survival mode, you don't evaluate. You just try to feel safe. Manipulators who understand dysregulation aren't operating from anger. They're operating from strategy. They have learned, sometimes consciously, sometimes through years of instinct, that a regulated person is a dangerous person. A regulated person can think, can set limits, can leave. So the goal is never to win an argument. The goal is to make sure you never feel calm enough to have one. Here is the darkest part. The damage doesn't stop when they leave. Because your nervous system doesn't know they're gone. It learned. It adapted. It started treating ordinary life as a threat zone, a message notification, a pause in conversation, a person's neutral face. Your body kept scanning for danger that had been trained into it by someone else. You became dysregulated in rooms they'd never even been in. That's not anxiety. That's not a disorder. That's an adaptation. Your body protected you the only way it knew how. And the cruelest part, the person who caused it gets to move on, regulated, calm, already recalibrating their next relationship with everything they learned from yours, while you're still standing in a grocery store, shaking, wondering what's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. Something was done to you. There's something quietly devastating about realizing that the most sophisticated form of control doesn't require raised voices or broken objects. It just requires someone who is patient enough to study you, to learn the specific frequency at which you fall apart, and the specific hands that can reach it. The question worth sitting with isn't whether this happened to you. It's whether your body already knows the answer, and whether you've been calling that knowledge something else. If any of this landed somewhere specific, stay with it. Don't rush past it. The recognition itself is something. And if you want to understand more about what recovery from this actually looks like, not the surface version, the real one, that conversation is coming.